Now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi this year announced the country's bid to become the world's biggest defense manufacturing base. And the government plans to raise defense exports by $5 billion in the next 2 years. With this expansion of India's defense industry, Ishan Garg finds out if this means the country's budding defense startups will get their hands on a bigger slice of the pie.
Okay, let's go for takeoff. Very nice. Stable takeoff. Maintain hover. Control check. Very slight control check.
Pilots test their search and strike drone. Its manufacturer, Jatayu Unmanned System, says it can fly 15 kilometers from its control station, which could make it suitable to patrol India's thousands of kilometers of long porous borders. And by replacing the gun with a camera, it can also become a surveillance tool, capable, its makers say, of transmitting information from 150 kilometers away. India is betting on manufacturers, including startups such as Mumbai-based Jatayu, making weapons like this, not only to modernize its army, but also to become a defense export hub. It's a dramatic shift for a country that has for decades been one of the world's biggest arms importers. Aman Johri, an aeronautics engineer by training, believes the country is ready to shift roles.
We can offer a hub of manufacturing, we can offer a hub of innovation and technology development. There's an ecosystem here as well, which makes India a favorable country for export orders.
The ability to produce cost-effective equipment is one reason why analysts believe India could be a solid defense partner for developing economies in Asia and Africa. According to the government's own figures, India's defense exports for the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 have hit an all-time high of some $1.95 billion, an increase of more than 10 times in 6 years, with sales going to more than 70 countries. A sign of the growing role India's nearly 200 defense startups are playing in developing its military capabilities.
India's defense industry is dominated by big public sector units like the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited that makes the Tejas light fighter jets and at least a dozen other public sector companies. But now the Indian government is easing barriers of entry into defense production, and with that, a number of big private players are coming in too.
But analysts such as Lieutenant General Satish Dua, who has served for half a decade on India's apex military procurement body, believe there remains a place for startups.
Like whether it is drones or AI or robotics, these are the things that are done better by startups. On the other hand, there are several critical components of larger systems and platforms also, which fit the role of being developed by startups.
Lieutenant General Dua says officials are now looking to bank on startups to acquire cutting-edge defense technology. These startups could also help India on the journey to become more self-sufficient and possibly reduce the country's reliance on arms from countries like Russia, France and the US, India's biggest suppliers. According to the respected Stockholm International Peace Research Institute or SIPRI's arms transfer report, India was the world's largest arms importer from 2018 to 2022, accounting for 11% of global arms imports. Comparatively, when it came to the ranking of top arms exporting nations last year, India came in at only number 41. More paths need to be put into place in order for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision to make in India, make for the world to take off. But there is good news for India's homegrown companies. The Defence Ministry says it will now spend 3/4 of its procurement budget to buy from local manufacturers. But to get that, analysts say the country's private defence players may have to cross a few hurdles, including a funding crunch and long procurement delays. Even for companies like Jatayu that already have contracts with the government, generating revenue can take a while.
I have sat on the Defence Acquisition Council myself. Our procedures, our defence acquisition procedures are very painful, very tedious. I mean, but that's another way of saying it. It's a backhanded compliment also because they are also very thorough.
The Indian government has now launched startup incubators to help with the funding and has set up a fast-track procedure that can cut down acquisition times from a year to just 2 to 3 months. It's welcome news for startups who hope these initiatives will help domestic and export revenues soar, giving them some optimism perhaps for long-term growth. Ishan, Garg, CNA, New Delhi.